And this is Irwin Jr. This is how Irwin Jr. came to us in the backside of a truck, also being smuggled. Irwin Jr. was named after Steve Irwin. And that's Irwin now. Irwin's kind of, he's really still very small, but really mischievous. That's him and a friend of his inside their water bowl, basically. They're still really, really small. And that's the team that went in Vietnam. So we're right outside, and you can notice on the outside there's all this electrical fencing. Not because we're worried the bears will get out, but more to protect the bears from people that are coming in. And that's pretty much it, okay? So if you guys have any questions, please let me know. This is a very short presentation.
You talked about the bears and like mental stability and that sort of thing, and I know you have different enclosures for different things, but are some bears just so mentally unstable that they need to be euthanized for basically behavior reasons?
You know, they've actually tried some behavior drugs.
Right.
Some of them.
Mm-hmm. I don't think any of them have been euthanized because of behavioral problems. I think they do everything that they possibly can, and then some, you know, for these bears. Yeah, I don't believe any of them have been euthanized for that. Mm-hmm. That's a good question.
Plug we were worried about.
Mm-hmm.
Do they use drugs or natural?
They use both. We actually have had a homeopathist that came out and did some homeopathic work with the bears, and they do both.
Mm-hmm.
Both of these drugs when they use drugs.
Mm-hmm. They use flower essences, all sorts of stuff. Yeah.
They use whatever they can get their hands on. That's what they do.
Yeah.
Do any of the zoos from other countries want to bring these animals in and tell more of the story? Brought to other zoos?
I see.
Panda bears and, you know.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Do you want to take that?
You can go.
Okay.
We have had requests from other zoos actually to come and take these bears. They are protected by CITES 1, and they're not. There's a big issue about having them shipped from China into other countries, and so we're a little hesitant about that. But also because a lot of these bears have been under pretty severe circumstances, and so we want to be able to rehabilitate them as fast as possible. And so we're a little bit hesitant to send them out. But
And as I say, even though tour groups are allowed to come into the sanctuary, it's extremely controlled. It's only 2 days a month, and they're very small groups. It would be different in a zoo. I think it would be hard for some of these bears to have constant visits from humans.
They are in fact endangered.
Yeah, absolutely.
You don't go to many zoos and see too many endangered things. So.
Oh, yeah, you do.
Yeah, you do. That's true.
Now you do. Most zoos are endangered.
Well, the zoos are endangered.
Well, culturally, obviously, this is a sensitive issue, I would imagine, it's just for centuries. But what kind of support do the local people? Are they behind this, or is there animosity?
that's a very good question. I think if you were to ask anybody in China today whether or not they've heard of bear farming, they would think because of all the publicity that animalization has done in China. There's a lot of people who are sympathetic. In China, there's a lot of different animal welfare groups who are sympathetic, and certainly the children that come and visit our schools, their minds are changed. There are people who are in the industry who are resistant, of course, because that affects their back pocket. I think personally that, as the same in the U.S., there are people who are aware of animal rights issues, and there are people who just don't care. So we find a wide range of opinions, but I think as long as you start to educate people and you show by example, they're the same as us, they are sympathetic to it. Just real quickly, I'll add to Morgan's presentation. Andrew, our #1 bear, died in February 2006, and Morgan said he endeared himself to a lot of people on the staff. And so when he was about to be euthanized, he had liver cancer, just like we had other bears.
Euthanized. Jill went out on the CB and said, hey, look, we have to put Andrew down. If you want to say goodbye to him, please come to hospital room #2. And so, many people came. A lot of the Chinese staff came. It was the queue was so long, the line went around the building. Everybody wanted to say goodbye to Andrew. And these are people, local people who in the past never thought that, they would want to take care of animals. So, you just have to, I think people just have to learn. And people have, and eventually they become sympathetic to it. So it just depends on who you speak to, though.
Is the farming going on mostly in the Sichuan province? Is that mostly where it's taking place, or is it countrywide?
It's countrywide, but there's big concentration in the Sichuan province. Yeah.
Is that because that's their native habitat?
There's part of the reason. The Sichuan province is actually where a lot of the TCM medicine comes from, including the herbs. That's also where they naturally roam, up there and up in the northern part of China, where it's a little bit more mountainous. It's the natural habitats. Yeah. Yeah. Thanks.
What does the future hold in terms of legislation, governmental support to help change this? And because at some point you may run out of room. What happens, and then how do we move away from having this bear be an endangered species?
And that's a very good question. We debated for a really long time about our long-term strategy because we obviously do not have room for 7,000 to 10,000 bears in our sanctuary. What we plan to do, if bear farming was to end tomorrow, was utilize the farms themselves. In China, they're required to have some outdoor space for the bears. And so when you go visit a lot of these farms, they have these huge outdoor space. But of course, there's all this grass and stuff because the bears never get let outside. But what we want to do is be able to utilize those outdoor spaces, let the bears out and give them basic food and water and that sort of care, basic enclosures. So that way they're protected, but they have what they need. That's the long-term thought process for China. In Vietnam, it's a little bit more difficult because there's no such thing as bear farming, and so we're coming up right now. Actually, part of the visit to Vietnam was to come up with a long-term plan for those bears as well, and it may be in partnership with the government to have a certain part of the national parks set aside for the habitats for these bears. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Now that the Olympics are over, has there been any attempt to ask CNN if they'd like to try and come back and do?
We are always looking for publicity angles and media outlets, to kind of spread the word. We're constantly in touch with them, and our press releases go out to Reuters and all these different channels to try to get them to cover the story. But I think because of the Olympics, there was that China angle that everybody was trying to get. And so it may be a little bit more difficult now, but if you have any idea of how we can pitch it, or if you know anybody who in the media, we would love to, go ahead and reach out to them.
Is the main reason that they're endangered because of the oil harvesting, or is it the habitat destruction?
Yeah, it's both. It's exactly right, Morgan. It's both. Yeah. Do you want to add?
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't want to interrupt you. Yeah. Yep, like that.
The whole world is so aware of pandas.
Right.
There's such a following.
Sure.
Some of that PR be used to help the moon bears.
Sure. Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, pandas it's really China's bread and butter. Everybody knows about the panda, and the panda breeding centers have a lot of visitors every year. With the Asiatic black bear, it's a little bit trickier because not a lot of people have heard about it, like you said. But most recently, the Asian National Geographic had this big survey and had people vote, what were the big five. In Africa there's a big five of animals. They asked their viewers and their readers what were the big five animals in Asia, and the moon bear was one of them. So that's one of the things that we're trying to do, is trying to raise the profile of the moon bears. But it's a long way to go because not many people have heard about it, or that maybe they have heard about bears, but not necessarily, or the sun bears. A lot of people have heard about sun bears, but not necessarily moon bears. So yeah, it's definitely one of the challenges that Morgan and I are working on this year. Yeah. Go ahead. Feel free to pipe in, Morgan, whenever you want. Yeah. Any other questions?
All right. Thank you.